is not good for any, well, it's good for a few people, but inflation is not good. So you have to learn how it works. Real assets usually go up. You know, got some silver right here.
There's a system called NISA in Japan. So it's kind of a small investing for short. Any advice for Japanese investors? Do you think they should invest in stocks or invest in index funds, or any practical advice?
So I cannot say too many times, stay with what you know, and that's how you will be successful. Everybody knows something about something. Stay with it. Now, some people will say, oh, Jim, that's boring. Ryan, be boring. If you want to be a successful investor, be boring.
So I'd like to pivot our conversation to more personal issues. So as an individual living in Japan, how can folks in Japan protect themselves from the bear market or the inflation these days?
When there's inflation, prices go up. If you own the things that go up in price, you protect yourself and you make money. When we have inflation, the price of rice goes up. The price of silver goes up. The price of some things goes higher and higher. If you know about those things and you are prepared, and if you can buy cotton when there's inflation, you're going to protect yourself and you're going to make money. Inflation is not good for any, well, it's good for a few people, but inflation is not good. So you have to learn how it works. When they print a lot of money, real assets usually go up. So find the things that will go up in price. You know, I own some silver, you know, I have some silver right here because I hope that if there's inflation, the price of silver will help protect me. But there are other things. I mentioned cotton, oil. There are many things that will go up when the prices go higher.
Do you think the inflation has already peaked? What's your predictions right at the moment?
Well, we had inflation in 2022, but the way markets work, you know, when things go up, they don't go straight up every day. They usually go up like this, then they go down for a while, they go back up. You know, they go up and down. That's the way things work. They go up in zigzag patterns. We had a lot of inflation last year because of the war, because of oil, because of grain, et cetera. But now we're having a correction. It's going to make the central bank think things are okay. So probably we will all feel better for a while. And the central banks will think they solved the problem. But remember, things go up and down and back up again. Inflation will certainly come back. And if the economy slows down more, central banks are going to print more money. It's not good, but it will certainly cause more inflation as central banks begin to print money again, because they think they have to do that to protect the economy. The central banks don't really care about you and me. They care about their job. And they think the way to save their job is to print money and keep the economy strong. But printing money and keeping the economy strong leads to more inflation later. You know, in the 70s, we had inflation worldwide. Central banks had to do something. They raised interest rates several times. Interest rates in the US in 1980 were on treasury bills, the safest investment, government paper, was over 20%. United States government treasury bills yielded over 20% in 1980. That's what they had to do to kill inflation. Situation is worse now. So ultimately, the interest rates are going to have to go very, very high to kill inflation because they have printed so much money and run up so much debt. Japan, America, everybody, even China has a lot of debt now.
So you talked about protecting ourselves and preparing Plan B. So a lot of Japanese people are shifting from just saving money to investment. And there's a system called NISA in Japan. So it's kind of a small investing for short. It stands for Nippon Individual Savings Account, and people are interested in NISA. So any advice for Japanese investors? Do you think they should invest in stocks or invest in index funds, or any practical advice?
Ryan, I want to say again, no matter who you are, you should only invest in what you yourself know a lot about.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows a lot about something, whether it's cars or fashion or something. That's where you should invest. You should not listen to somebody on the internet. If I tell you something to invest in, you do, and it goes up, you don't know what to do. If it goes down, you don't. If it goes down, you blame me, but you don't know what to do because you don't know why you invested in the first place. So I cannot say too many times, stay with what you know, and that's how you will be successful. Everybody knows something about something. Stay with it. Now, some people will say, oh, Jim, that's boring. Ryan, be boring. If you want to be a successful investor, be boring.
Be boring. Okay.
I know you want to go down to the restaurant on Saturday or the bar on Saturday and talk about your exciting investments.
Yes.
That's not the way to be a successful investor. The way to be a successful investor is to stay with what you know, only with what you know. And if you don't know something to invest in, don't worry, do nothing. Just put your money in the bank and wait. You will find something. If I told you could only have 25 investments in your life, you would be very careful. You would not be jumping in and out of things. You would not listen to somebody on the internet or on the TV. You would be very, very careful.
Okay, thank you. Great advice. Pivot the conversation back to your book. In your book, you mentioned about the future of Japan, and you talked about agriculture and tourism. So do you see some kind of hope in the field of like agriculture and tourism for Japan to survive?
Well, yeah, throughout history, even when things get really bad, there are always some people who succeed. There's always something doing okay. As I look to the next 10, 20 years in Japan, agriculture has to get better. The average age of farmers in Japan is 66. You don't have any farmers. And unless everybody in Japan is going to starve and not wear clothes, prices are going to get better for agriculture. So yes, now, but do not become a farmer if you don't like the sun, if you don't like getting hot and dirty. Tourism, many people will come to Japan. Japan is a fantastic site for tourism. What unbelievable places and food and people you have in Japan. So there are great opportunities. You have not been a great tourist site for the last many decades for many reasons, but it's going to be again as people continue to open up. So those are two possibilities. But Ryan, if you don't like foreigners, don't invest in tourism. If you don't like getting hot and dirty, don't invest in agriculture. Stay with what you know and stay with what you like.
Great. I 100% agree that Japan, one of the solutions for Japan to rise again is tourism. But at the same time, I think we need to open up our mindset because, immigration in Japan, there's a big debate on that. And a lot of people are kind of agree that we need a lot of more people coming into Japan. But if you look on the internet, there's some kind of a discriminatory remarks against people of foreign nationalities. And some people are experiencing fears of a large-scale immigration. Do you think we should change our mindset and welcome people from abroad?
Well, Ryan, you're Japanese.
Yes.
I should ask you, can you change your mindset? I know that because of your history and many things in the past few decades and 100 years, Japan has not been very open and receptive to tourism. Some Japanese like foreigners, but most Japanese do not like foreigners. They do not know foreigners. They do not understand about foreigners. And so they say, we don't want you. Stay away. I think younger Japanese are beginning to like because of television, movies, music, sports, everything. I mean, they're beginning to be more open to foreigners. And Japan, as I said, has it. But most people did not know that Japan has fantastic sites, man-made and natural sites, fantastic skiing, but most people don't know that. Oh, Kyoto is such an astonishing place.
Yes.
And unagi. I love unagi. But most people never heard of unagi. So there are many reasons for people to discover Japan. They do not know them, but that's changing. It's changing slowly. And I think that as more and more people come, Japan will be more receptive and more open. I hope so.
So there are a lot of good food in Japan, great tourist places, great assets. How can we change that into business and change that into economic growth? How can we use such treasures, I can say?
Well, history is pretty clear that countries which have open economies and open societies are usually more successful than countries that are closed. I can give you many. In 1962, for instance, the richest country in Asia was Myanmar, not Japan. Myanmar was the richest country in Asia in 1962. But then they closed off. They said, go away, foreigners. We don't want foreigners here. We're not going to let the foreigners come here again. And 50 years later, Myanmar was the poorest country in Asia. Burma, the old name was Burma. But there are many examples like that in history. The countries that close off have been less successful than the countries that are open. Now, I cannot tell Japan what to do. The Japanese have to decide that. But I do know history, and I do know that being open and receptive is usually much better than being closed and running up debt and hope hope is not a way to succeed. Action is the way to succeed. And my goodness, Ryan, there's so many really smart Japanese. Let them go. Let them do it.
Because people call the 30 years the lost 30 years. And when you look at Japan's wages, it's not rising. It's still the same. And people are losing hope. So it's interesting to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
Well, if you open your economy more, then you will have more success. I mean, this is simple history again. It's not just economics. Open economies that trade and interact with other countries usually become more successful than countries that are closed off and hidden. Japan has many things to sell to the rest of the world, many things to trade with the rest of the world. Please do not close off.
What's challenging is that as an individual, it might be more rational to move abroad and survive rather than staying in Japan. Do you think, talented people are starting to go abroad, going to Singapore, going to the United States, and not staying in Japan? What do you think about that? Do you think more people should stay in Japan and keep the economy running and keep the unagi business? Do you think we should stay in Japan?
Well, I cannot tell anybody how to live their life. I have moved to Asia because, in my view, Asia is going to be the most important part of the world for my children. But people have to make their own decisions. If you don't want to move, do not. If you don't like Paris, do not move to Paris. If you do not like foreign countries, if you don't like New York, don't move to New York. But if you like the outside world and other places and having adventure, you might consider exploring moving to other countries, other cities. Many Japanese in history have moved away. Oh my gosh. Many Japanese in America, Brazil, and South America, and other places. If you like it, do not be restricted and feel you cannot move. History is full of millions and millions of people have moved to other countries. It can be done, and it often leads to success.
In your book, you touched on the Olympics in 2020, and also there's a International Japan Expo, Osaka Kansai Expo in 2025, and also Sapporo, Hokkaido is trying to host the Olympics in 2030. Do you think Olympics or big events are a solution?
I mean, the simple answer is, Ryan, Japanese population goes down every year. Debt goes up every week. That is not a way to build a successful society and a successful country, a successful economy. You don't have to be smart, just read and you will see. Think about it. If your population goes down every year and your debt goes up every week, it cannot be good. Who's going to pay the debt in 20 years? Not me. I'm too old. I'm not going to pay your debt or anybody's debt. But these are very simple facts. Now, things like the Olympics are wonderful, but no country in the world has become great and strong and successful because they had the Olympics. Even if you have the Olympics 3 or 4 times, that's not going to save anybody. Maybe it's good for some hotels for a month, for 2 months. No, you have to come up with basic fundamental changes if you're going to succeed and survive. I mean, these are very simple. Forget economics, read history, and you will see it's always worked that way, whether we like it or not.
Do you feel Japan is changing? Because you explained throughout the show that how, logically speaking, we can predict that Japan will decline. And I believe a lot of Japanese are aware of that. Do you think Japan is starting to change?
I should ask you. There are some changes, small changes, yes. But the Japanese. I mean, many Japanese would say, I had rather my children live in a poor Japan than in a new Japan. I do not want Japan to be a country of foreigners or new things. Now, that's what many Japanese, and listen, if that's what they think, okay, that's what they want. But the way your grandfather was, the way your parents probably were, you know your Japanese history better than I do. And when you've opened, you've been, wow, people could not believe how wonderful you were. When the Japanese set out to do something, they do it better than anybody in the world. I'm sure the best Italian restaurants in the world are not in Italy. I'm sure they're in Japan, because when you do something, you do it better than anybody. Look at cars. And Toyota became unbelievably successful because they made good products. They engaged with the outside world and they understood reality. Japan has some spectacular successes in your history. You can again, or you can close off like other countries and other companies have done.
I have two more questions. So I would like to ask you about the macro outlook. We kind of touched upon that, but the IMF announced that the global growth will expect to slow down from 3.4% in 2022 to 2.9% in 2023. What's your prediction on the macro outlook of the future of the world economy?
Well, at the moment, nearly everybody in the world says we're going to have a recession in 2023. It's been my experience, Ron, that when everybody knows something, it doesn't happen. When everybody says, wow, if everybody says Japan's going to win the World Cup, Japan is not going to win the World Cup. And there have been so many people who say there's a recession. Yes, I can see bad times coming in the next year or two or three. But in my view, things are going to be better for a while because there's so much pessimism. And in my experience, when there's so much pessimism anywhere about things, something usually happens to make people less pessimistic. Yes, 2024 will probably be very bad. But in the meantime, we're all going to be surprised. You are going to be surprised. And the experts are going to be surprised for a while.
Great. So I'd like to wrap up. So my final question, could you give some final comments to our viewers watching in Japan who are mostly young, enthusiastic business persons? Could you give us some final comments?
Well, my final comment, I want to repeat. Be very careful because we are going to have bad times sometime in the next few years. Become knowledgeable. Learn about what's going on. And if you're knowledgeable, then you will get prepared. And the people who are prepared will do fine, no matter how bad things get. But make your own decisions. Make your own knowledge. Do not listen to me or other people. Just be worried. Be prepared. And you will come out fine. Many people have come out of previous disasters very successful. If you are prepared and knowledgeable, you can come out. You will survive no matter what happens. So be worried, be prepared, and everything will be fine.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jim-san. Thank you for joining Pivot, our show. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.